Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, I'm going to react to the top 20 normal looking photos with incredible background stories. Now, this is going to be quite an interesting one because most of the time when I see a photo, and I imagine the same thing goes for you, and someone's smiling in the photo, you assume they're having a good time. You assume that they're on vacation maybe, you know, they're just out and about and they wanted to capture a memorable moment. You never think that there could be something sinister going on in the background, that, you know, maybe they were, forced potentially at gunpoint to smile for the photo. You never really think of stuff like that. So this video is going to be really cool just to show us some, on one hand, quite innocent looking pictures, but then some potentially crazy stories behind the photo. So yeah, this should be a really interesting video. Let's do it.
Picture perfect? Think again. Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 normal looking pictures with disturbing backstories. For this list, we're looking at photos that seem perfectly innocent until you do some further reading. Number 20, Tragedy by the Sea. At first glance, this photo might appear romantic. After all, it shows a couple on a windswept beach. But look closer, and the woman's distraught expression says it all. Right before photographer John L. Gaunt took the shot, the couple's 19-month-old son had been happily playing in their yard. But he wandered off and disappeared into the waves.
No.
The couple is standing on the shore, realizing their son is gone.
No.
This photo actually won the 1955 Pulitzer Prize. And given the backstory, it's a haunting shot of sudden and unexpected tragedy.
Oh.
Number 19.
Oh my God, that is awful. I mean, even if it won the Pulitzer Prize, those parents don't care about that. They're just thinking, gosh, my son. That's terrible.
The Space Shuttle Challenger crew. It's unclear where the astronauts in this photo are going, but they appear excited and optimistic about whatever's on the horizon. Doing some digging, you'll find that the crew was walking out of the operations and checkout building. They were headed for Pad 39B, where the Space Shuttle Challenger was about to take off. The STS-51L mission was notable for its diverse crew, although that's sadly not what it's best remembered for.
Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Only a minute after launching, the Space Shuttle exploded.
73.5 seconds. Challenger's engine shut down. The last data from Challenger is radioed to Earth.
While nobody knows precisely when each crew member died, nobody survived after the spacecraft hit the ocean. This photo was taken on January 28, 1986, mere hours before the crew unknowingly embarked on what would be their final mission. Number 18.
That is brutal. What a way to go. I mean, on one hand, they were doing what they loved, they were going off into space, but can you imagine the moment they realized that something was going terribly wrong? That fear, the regret, the thinking of your family, your kids back on Earth.
Christopher McCandless. With a grin across his face, the man in this picture appears to be waving hello, but he was actually waving goodbye. This bearded explorer is Christopher McCandless, the subject of the 2007 biopic Into the Wild.
Is there anybody here?
Leaving his old life behind, McCandless decided to fend for himself in Mother Nature's backyard, eventually seeking refuge in an abandoned Fairbanks Bus 142. In August 1992, the 24-year-old McCandless died at Stampede Trail, Alaska, most likely due to starvation. Based on the last self-photo he took, it's evident McCandless knew his days were numbered.
Oh, this is terrible.
While it's hard to make out, the paper McCandless is holding is his farewell message, reading, quote, "I have had a happy life and thank the Lord. Goodbye, and may God bless all." Number 7.
But didn't this guy do any research? Didn't he, look into if he could actually find enough food to survive? Or did he just go out there on a whim? Oh, this is terrible. You think before going on a mission, not a mission, but making a choice like this, you would have everything nailed down. You'd have crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's.
17. Lightning strike. While the numbers vary, the odds of getting struck by lightning are relatively slim. That doesn't mean you shouldn't take lightning safety seriously, though. This photo of 18-year-old Michael McQuilkin and his 12-year-old brother Sean has served as a cautionary tale ever since it was taken in 1975. Posing together at Morro Rock, the brothers were goofing around with their hair standing on end. Their static hair and those storm clouds in the background were more foreboding than either realized, as lightning struck them shortly after their sister took the picture.
No.
Another hiker died, and while the brothers survived, Sean was left with third-degree burns and took his own life in 1989.
What?
Michael continues to spread awareness about the dangers and warning signs of lightning.
But why?
Number 16.
Why did he do that? Like, was it a result of what happened with the lightning? Maybe it messed with his mind in some way? Oh, that's terrible.
Another day in Oma. Looking at this photo, the first thing you're inclined to notice is the man standing in the street and the child on his shoulders. Meanwhile, the red car parked on the side of the road appears inconsequential. What you might not realize is that the photo was taken in Oma, a Northern Ireland town, on August 15, 1998, not long before this car blew up. The Real Irish Republican Army, a splinter group, executed this car bombing 5 days after the Good Friday Agreement was signed.
500 pounds of explosives detonated inside a red Vauxhall Cavalier parked on the roadside, pulverizing surrounding buildings.
Although the real IRA claimed that innocent civilians were not their target, 29 lives were lost in the bombing, and roughly 220 were injured.
It was the biggest loss of life in a single attack in Northern Ireland.
While the man and child thankfully survived the bombing, the person behind the camera did not. Number 15.
Now talk about serendipity, just good fortune. You know, those two luckily made it. I've heard of the IRA. They were around, I think, in the 70s and 80s. They were part of the Troubles. Apparently they did really, really terrible stuff. I don't know what they were fighting for. I think it was maybe independence. They wanted an independent Ireland. Yeah, a bit before my time, but yeah, I've heard quite a bit about them.
David A. Johnston. While not a household name, David A. Johnston was a revered volcanologist who, along with the United States Geological Survey, helped save thousands of people through his on-site work. Tragically, Johnston lost his own life in the process. All seems well in this photo, as Johnston sits in a chair outside looking into the camera. Little did anyone know that within the next 13 hours, Johnston would perish in the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. The eruption, preceded by seismic activity, was first reported by Johnston, who radioed the message, quote, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it." Within the next seconds, the signal went out and Johnston was never heard from again.
So I guess I had the realization right away that this was some kind of a tragedy. And on the one hand, it was this huge, exciting, and interesting magmatic eruption, and on the other hand, I was pretty certain that something terrible had happened to Dave.
While his remains were never found, it's believed that Johnston died at Coldwater 2, a post that wasn't as safe as anticipated.
I think one of the things to put in perspective is that 234 square miles of that area of Washington were devastated by that blast. So 5.7 miles?
Yeah.
That was within that devastation zone, the blast zone.
Number 14.
That's terrible. I mean, hopefully, I can't believe I'm saying this, but hopefully it was a quick and relatively painless death. You know, hopefully it wasn't, you know, the lava just like burning him. That would be horrible, horrible.
Mark Jackson's basketball card. For die-hard sports fans, you'll recognize the player on this basketball card as Mark Jackson, who started his NBA career with the New York Knicks and later coached the Golden State Warriors. At first glance, this card would likely blend in with the rest of your collection. Take a closer look at the lower left-hand corner, though. You see those two young fans sitting in the front row? They are Lyle and Eric Menendez, two wealthy brothers who took the lives of their allegedly abusive parents on August 20th, 1989.
The brothers who were thought to have it all, at times acting out, even going as far as robbing houses until they were caught.
The brothers weren't arrested for these crimes until March.
No, these two are just deviants. Like, I mean, so if they're committing crimes before they actually murdered their parents, to me that demonstrates that they already had a real strong criminality within them. I'm not to say that their parents didn't do those things. I don't know, but it seems that there was definitely form for this kind of behavior.
8th, 1990, and in between that time, they spent an extravagant amount of money.
So at the time, nothing seemed suspicious to you about them?
No.
But soon detectives shifted their focus.
The brothers were out there spending money like it was water.
It appears that some of that fortune went towards Knicks tickets before their apprehension. Number 13, Rodney
Your own parents. Honestly, sickening.
Alcala. If we asked you to name the man in this photo, you might take a wild guess and say Christoph Waltz if he had Weird Al's hairdresser. In reality, he's Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer. How did he get such an outlandish nickname? Because Alcala appeared on the dating game prior to his 1979 arrest.
The woman who won a date with him ended up backing out, saying she found him creepy.
Come on, over here.
Her intuition probably saved her life.
Right.
Others would not be so fortunate.
While his total victim count could be as high as 130, Alcala was trialed for 5 murders in 2010, almost 31 years after his apprehension. Alcala represented himself in court, as seen in this picture. Even more bizarre, Alcala was his own defense witness, asking himself, quote, "Rodney, would you please tell us about your hair?" Alcala ultimately received the death sentence, although he's still awaiting execution to this date.
Wow.
Number 12.
How long does it take typically from someone being sentenced to execution, through all of the appeals, all of that stuff, to the sentence being carried out? How long does it usually take? I'm kind of split on it. On one hand, I don't think, because there's bound to be innocent people on death row for sure. But on the other hand, like I recently reacted to a Mr. Ballin video about this. It's the recent one I did, and they fully deserved the execution. So I'm kind of split between whether I'm in support of it or not, really.
Ayano Tokumasu. Remember that scene in Superman 2 where a little boy falls over the rail at Niagara Falls?
Oh my God!
Well, that sort of thing happens more often than you think, but Superman sadly isn't around to save the day. On the surface, there doesn't seem to be anything particularly special about this photo, which sees several people gathering at Niagara River. The woman in the red sweater is Ayano Tokumasu, an exchange student from Japan. If you think standing on that pillar seems kind of dangerous, you'd be right. Not long after the photo was taken, she lost her balance and fell over the edge, ultimately going down Horseshoe Falls. Tokumasu was swept from the river's Canadian side to its American side, where her lifeless body was discovered.
People just go too far. I don't blame anything on the park. I just think people wanted to get that extra edge, get closer, get closer.
Oh, man.
And unfortunately, things happen.
Number 11. The SS Grand...
So sad. Pure accident. Pure accident. This must happen all the time. All the time. Just wrong place, wrong time, gone.
Grand Caen. The SS Grand Caen may not be a household name like the Titanic, but it's forever linked to the Texas City disaster. And this photo captured the vessel just before tragedy spiraled out of control. On April 16, 1947, smoke was seen emitting from the docked ship in Texas City. A fire had broken out with about 2,200 tons of ammonium nitrate aboard. This naturally amounted to an explosion, but that was only the beginning.
Texas City, Texas was joined by a tremendous blast.
The blast ignited a subsequent explosion on the High Flyer, another ship carrying ammonium nitrate.
And about 8:15, they housed me to come aboard the ship, that they had a fire down in the hold. Went aboard the ship, and we seen smoke coming up from between the cargo and the side of the ship.
The ensuing chain reaction resulted in a loss of 581 lives, with only one survivor from the local fire department.
One survivor.
Number 10, Apollo.
Jesus. I mean, all the the families that were affected by that. That's a lot of people. 500 people. May they rest in peace.
One pool party. The space pod in the swimming pool is only the second weirdest thing about this photo. Like, how often do you see astronauts lounging on water floats while wearing their spacesuits?
Right.
Surely there must be a humorous story behind such a surreal image. Unfortunately, it's quite the opposite. The suited-up astronauts in this photo were Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger B. Chaffee. They were training for the Apollo 1 mission, which was planned to commence in February of 1967. On January 27th of that year, a fire broke out in the cabin during a pre-launch test. Unable to open the hatch door, the 3 men perished in the fire, which was caused by electrical problems. Thus, the mission ended before it even started.
The pad where Grissom, Chaffee, and White died is now a memorial. Lieutenant Colonel Virgil Grissom, U.S. Air Force, and Lieutenant Commander Roger Chaffee are buried at the Arlington National Cemetery. Lieutenant Colonel Edward White is interred at West Point Military Academy.
Number 9.
How many people have died either in transit or in training? Like, do during space missions. Because we've had another one here as well. I think that was Apollo 5 or the Shuttle 5. There must be like quite a few. But I guess this is it. When technology is so cutting edge, we don't really have any kind of knowledge to go by. It's kind of just we're experimenting. The risk of this is pretty high, isn't it?
Bear photographer. There are countless photos of bears out there, and this one doesn't look much different from all the rest. Since the picture was taken from a distance and the bear isn't charging, the photographer seemingly isn't in any immediate danger. After Darsh Patel snapped this pic using his phone, however, the bear started to follow him and his friends.
Oh God.
The group split up as the bear began to close in on them, ultimately pursuing Patel. His phone was eventually found with animal teeth marks, while Patel's body was discovered at a nearby ravine.
A scenic Sunday afternoon ended in horror.
He got mauled.
5 hikers crossed paths with a 300-pound black bear that looked similar to this one.
The bear was still hanging around the 22-year-old's fatally mauled remains, and the authorities took the wild animal out.
We believe this bear was about 4 years old. It was not a tagged bear, meaning it had no history with the DEP. There was no research done on this bear that we know of. It had no previous incidents of aggression that would have called it to our attention.
This photo op came at a steep price for Patel and the bear. Number 8.
Mad to think that a 4-year-old bear could do that. That's a baby, isn't it? Or at least that's an infant bear. Like, bears live up to what? 30 years old, something like that? So that bear can't have been anywhere near fully grown. And it just ripped the poor guy to pieces.
What are you smiling at? The two men being escorted in this photo are Richard Hickok and Perry Edward Smith. Although handcuffs are visible, the jolly smile on Smith's face suggests they're only in for a mild offense. This couldn't be further from the truth. Ever hear of a book called In Cold Blood? Well, Hickok and Smith provided the basis for this best-selling true crime novel. The two criminals were convicted for the Clutter family murders and sentenced to death.
Richard Hickok, the first to be executed, decided by a coin toss. Perry Smith's was second.
In this chilling photo, Hickok and Smith can be seen leaving the courtroom right after receiving the guilty verdict. Much can be said about Smith's haunting grin. There's one takeaway from the image, though. It's that this crime was indeed cold-blooded. Number 7. BTK at graduation.
What makes people capable of doing such evil things and being able to laugh and smile about it? Isn't it weird? You know, like it's just they're going for like a walk in the park. Like, guys, you've just been sentenced to death. There's nothing funny about that.
Dennis Rader was his church's president, a Cub Scout leader, and an all-around pillar of the community. As you can tell from this photo, Rader was also a family man who seemed quite proud of his daughter Carrie at her college graduation. This would all be overshadowed, though, when Rader was exposed as the BTK Strangler, the letters standing for bind, torture, kill as his preferred MO.
When BTK came forward, everybody's life changed. He would see a woman walking and he would say, "She's next."
Over the course of multiple decades, this seemingly ordinary guy took 10 lives. In 2005, the authorities used Carrie Rader's DNA to link her father to a crime scene, culminating in his arrest.
Carrie had graduated from K-State, and while there, had tests at health services, both a pap smear and a biopsy. Investigators traveled to Manhattan with a subpoena in hand for those smears. Her DNA, a direct match to DNA left at BTK crime scenes.
Rader pled guilty and was subsequently sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences. About 14 years after her father was captured, Carrie released a book entitled A Serial Killer's Daughter, My Story of Faith, Love, and Overcoming.
It's been like a cathartic process of having to go do really hard work and find those memories again of my father that I had lost and try to separate my dad back out as my dad and remove the BTK from it.
Number 6.
Can you separate the two, though? Honestly, I really do take my hat off to her. You know, even though he was an absolute horrific monster that deserved the life sentences, that's still her dad that she, you know, turned into the police. Oh, man. How do you deal with that? Your dad is a serial killer.
Dutch Girls of Panama. Scrolling through Instagram, chances are you'll stumble across a number of pleasant photos like these. Standing against a colorful backdrop with green hills and blue skies, 22-year-old Lisana Froon appears to have a lovely day ahead of her. Froon was on vacation with 21-year-old Chris Kramers, a fellow Dutch student seen in another photo at the same spot. The two set out for a hike in Panama on April 1, 2014 when these pics were taken. This was also the day that Froon and Kramers disappeared, resulting in a grueling search. 10 weeks down the line, Froon's backpack was uncovered with her camera inside. Froon and Kramers' remains were eventually found scattered across the jungle, with the cause of death still up for debate. Number 5.
I mean, if their remains are like scattered around, I feel like they were probably mauled by a bear or something, right? And maybe the bear was dragging the body, I don't know, away, and the shoe fell off. I don't know. Some other clothing items fell off as well. What do you guys think?
Travis Alexander. Travis Alexander was 30 when this photo was taken of him in the shower. The person behind the camera was Jodi Arias, with whom Alexander had a shaky romantic relationship. This was the last photo ever taken of Alexander alive, as his friends found his body in the shower a few days later. It was only a matter of time until the authorities connected the dots and arrested his ex-girlfriend. Arias constantly changed her story, originally pleading innocence, later claiming that 2 intruders broke in, and ultimately testifying that she killed Alexander in self-defense.
Why?
The simple answer is that he attacked me, and I defended myself.
In the end, Arias was deemed guilty of first-degree murder, receiving a life sentence.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn, in the above entitled action, upon our oaths, do find the defendant as to count 1, first-degree murder, guilty.
Alexander appears off guard in this photo. He clearly had no idea what was coming.
Mate, if you ask me, the guy looks a little bit afraid. Can you guys see this as well? He looks afraid, man. You can see, I know what that looks like. That's fear. That is fear.
Number 4, the eternal shadow. At face value, this dark outline of a person could be chalked up to some harmless graffiti. While we wish that were the case, this shadowy figure resulted from the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In August of 1945, the US dropped 2 nuclear weapons, Little Boy and Fat Man, that resulted in anywhere between 129 and 226,000 deaths.
At 8:14, it was a sunny day. At 8:15, it was a hellscape.
Whoever this person was, it appears they were using a walking stick during their final moments when the blast hit.
Wow.
As a result of the bombing, an imprint of this unknown soul was left on the steps. This wasn't an isolated incident, as numerous shadows can still be found around the bombing sites, forever immortalizing those horrifying days.
How though?
Number 3.
How does that work though? Is it that the heat was so intense that they were vaporized and the remaining, like, I don't know, particles fell down to the ground? Like, what causes that to happen? Because they surely can clean that, but I guess maybe they want to honor the person by leaving it there.
The happy, creepy killer. Without any background information, the wide-eyed kid in this picture probably wouldn't strike you as very threatening. When you know the whole story, however, that innocent smile of his will quickly turn into a ghastly grin. This curly-haired 17-year-old is Jeffrey Franklin, who killed his parents and attacked his 3 siblings. Following a car chase, the authorities cornered Franklin at a dead end. The photo shows Franklin in the back of a police vehicle, not appearing especially distraught over the atrocities he's committed or his impending future behind bars. Claiming he felt like a, quote, evil being had taken over him, Franklin pled guilty and received 3 consecutive life sentences.
I don't blame anybody for the reactions to me because I feel that I justified most of them.
Number 2.
How do you justify attacking your siblings and killing your parents? How? People are so weird, honestly.
Goodbye, John Lennon. We're all familiar with the music of John Lennon as well as his tragic fate. Photographer Paul Gorish couldn't have predicted it at the time, but this would reportedly be the last picture anyone took of Lennon. The image seems innocent enough as the former Beatle signs his autograph for an apparent admirer. Lennon's impending demise was creeping up in the photo's corner, however. The man standing next to him is none other than Mark David Chapman, the one responsible for Lennon's untimely demise.
Hard to get to write at first. Then he wrote his name, John Lennon, and then underneath that, 1980.
Why did you do it?
He looked at me, as I mentioned earlier, he said, "Is that all? Do you want anything else?"
6 hours or so after this photo was taken, Lennon and Yoko Ono encountered Chapman again outside of their apartment building, the Dakota. With Lennon's back turned, Chapman drew his firearm, and the music world would never be the same again.
So I called the Daily News. He said to me,
you think you have what? And he said, Paul, are you sure that this is the man that you believe killed him? And I said, well, that's the man named Mark from Hawaii who was waiting out there all day with the album who got the autograph.
Before we unveil our top pick.
Why did he kill John Lennon? Like, has he ever confessed? Like, was he, I don't know, was he a fan of the Rolling Stones and he thought that, I don't know, John Lennon and the Beatles were some kind of threat? Like, what was the reason for him doing that? Like, why did he do it?
Here are some honorable mentions. Haiku scares. Mystery man in the background. Hiking tragedy. The woman in the photograph survived, but her hiking friend didn't. His master's voice. Logo was inspired by a dog that heard its late owner's voice on a recording.
Oh,
Before we continue,
really?
be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Tyler Hadley and the Red Solo Cup. Mere hours before raising his red Solo Cup in this pic, 17-year-old Tyler Hadley hid his parents' cell phone and took 3 ecstasy pills. Hadley proceeded to end his mother's life with a hammer and then did the same to his father. After cleaning up the mess, Hadley shared on Facebook he was throwing a party that very night. At said party, Hadley told his best friend Michael Mandel all about his heinous actions.
After he told me, I didn't believe him because he's been my best friend forever. I would never suspect anything like this. And I was looking around. He told me if I look at enough, I can see signs. I looked on the floor, I could see signs of blood. And that's when I went around back and looked in his parents' bedroom.
Using his phone, Mandel subsequently took this picture with Hadley, knowing it would be the last time they ever saw each other. Leaving the party, Mandel hid the pills Hadley planned to commit suicide with and called Crime Stoppers. This led to Hadley's arrest and life sentence without parole.
Nearly 3 years of pain and worry now starting to slowly subside with the stroke of a gavel.
Do you agree with our picks?
Wow, I just don't understand it. Like, you know, that last one, really haunting, kind of disturbed me. I just don't know why. Why did you do that? Like, why? You know, he looked like he was either 18 or close to 18. If you don't like living with your parents, leave, move out. And if you're not old enough, get a job, save towards it, and then when you're old enough, then you leave. I just don't get why you would do this to your parents. How could you even think about doing something like this to your parents? It's just, I could never. Like, I love my parents. Like, I'm sure most of you guys do too. It's crazy. But yeah, the video was amazing. Honestly, if you had showed me any one of these individual photos in isolation, I would never have guessed, you know, the backstory that's connected to it. I just wouldn't have guessed it. Really, really cool video. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.